Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on creating an adaptive learning experience in TotalLearn. Thank you all for joining me and my colleague Matt Lineker, who is keeping an eye on the chat today. As we are probably all doing so, I am working from home today and I happen to live opposite a school. So if you do hear children screaming, please don't be alarmed. There's just after school care. Today's session will be a mix of a few slides as well as a demo on my local version 12 site. So I'll skip over to that site partway through. The session today will be recorded. The audio and the visual will be available up on the community shortly after we commence today. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. As I say, Matt's going to keep an eye on the chat and I will periodically stop and ask him if there's any questions, just because it's not easy to see the chat when you've got a screen share going. And that's my opportunity to help you and answer any questions, but it's also my opportunity to take a sip of water. So please don't be shy and do ask. Anything in the chat or anything I should know before I kick off, Matt?
Nothing in the chat today, so if I just welcome to everyone, and yeah, feel free to post any questions you have, and we'll stop when there's opportunities to ask those questions to Meredith. So yeah, feel free to ask anything you want in the chat.
Wonderful. All right, let's get started. So first off, it seems like the obvious thing to ask is, what is adaptive learning? So adaptive learning really, certainly in terms of TotalLearn and how I define it and the research that I've done, is really a dynamically updating or individually responsive learning environment where learning items are automatically, typically, made available to learners based on predefined criteria. And as they meet those criteria, then those learning items are presented to them or made available to them, which ultimately provides a personalized or more personalized learning journey for them. Now, why adaptive learning, and what is the benefit of it? There's a number of benefits to adaptive learning. So the most relevant and timely learning items are delivered to the learner. And this learning is tailored to the individual, so that relates to that personalized learning experience. This in turn will likely improve engagement and success, whether success is defined as course completion or program completion or simply a pass. And the other side of adaptive learning is actually introducing a level of automation into programs and courses, which ultimately reduces teaching, trainer, and administrative overhead. So people can focus on the support and added value of being subject matter experts or administrative experts, rather than monitoring the courses in an area that could otherwise be automated. So within TotalLearn, adaptive learning starts with or pretty much revolves around the automated tracking of activity and course completion. For those who are unfamiliar with TotalLearn, this might be news. For those of you that this may not be. Activity completion can be either manual, so an individual can manually say, yes, I've completed this activity by a simple tick box, or it can be automated. This automation is predefined criteria that you set on each activity and resource that you create within a course. Activities are generally easier to track participation and understanding. So for example, a quiz activity, you can track the score or grade. SCORM, depending on how your SCORM activity is built, you can track a pass or completion or a combination of those, as well as even grade. And even forum posts, you can track whether the individual has made posts or replies or started new threads. Resources, however, things like files and links and the book activity, you can certainly track that they have been opened, but you can't in any way prove that the individual has read the content, or probably more importantly, understood the content, and in which case other assessments like a quiz or a SCORM or an assignment would be then required. The other part is course completion. Now, similarly, there you can have manual course completion, so an individual can go, yep, I'm done. Or it could be one or many individuals holding a certain role, such as trainer or manager or administrator, who can manually sign off completion, but for an individual. It can also be automated, and it could be a combination. You've got some very sophisticated options around course completion tracking, and when I flick over to my local site, I'll show you just some of those options. There's also the course completion block, which you can add to your courses, which can display to an individual what they've got left to do. Some courses are very big and have a lot of completion requirements, and it's important so the learner knows your expectations of them and what they've done and what's left to do. Anything so far in the chat, Matt?
No, Meredith, no questions so far in the chat, but like I say, anyone feel free to post a question at any time.
So the other part of, excuse me, just clearing my throat, no one panic. The other part of adaptive learning is setting restricted or conditional access. Now this functionality is very powerful, and when you pair it with activity and course completion, primarily activity completion, this is where you can build that adaptive learning path and control access and visibility to different learning items within a course. So hopefully on screen you can see in reasonable detail some of the different options you have around restricting access. Now there's a huge range there, and they are available for resources and activities, as I've said, but also for topic sections. So whether it be weekly or a topic section, you can actually add these restrictions. Some people find that's a bit of a hidden piece of functionality. You can have one restriction or a series or many restrictions applied. I'm going to show you what that looks like when you've got a couple of different restrictions. So it can be an any or and distinction for those restriction sets. And you can choose whether or not those restrictions are hidden or shown to learners. So they might be surprised by what pops up. That, of course, adds a level of gamification, which we covered a couple of weeks ago in a previous webinar. But it can also mean that an individual doesn't realise that their learning journey in a particular course is any different from the person sitting next to them or across the hall from them, or in this case, in another house working from home. And you can also, with all of these things combined, you can create multiple learning paths. And I'm just going to give you an example of one of those learning paths, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like in TotalLearn. Anything I should stop for, Matt?
No.
You all are quiet today. Okay, so this looks like a lot. Take a breath. It's not that complicated, but what it does show that it's a really great idea to plan out your adaptive learning path or paths within a course in advance. I don't recommend trying to do it with text boxes and drawing like I did here in my PowerPoint. I think maybe a whiteboard is a good idea. I would say Post-its, but save the trees and use something erasable. And this is perhaps a simple workflow, using air quotes here, for maybe a single subject within a course, or maybe for an entire course that's sort of a short to medium-sized course. Now you can see here that we've got an initial quiz, and based on the individual's score in that quiz, they're sent down a different path. So let's get the mouse going. So if an individual gets between 0 and 49%, they're directed straight to SCORM Activity 1. Upon completion, then the knowledge check, which is another quiz, is presented to them. If they then still fail, and I've got quite a high grade percentage here, so they need to get 80% to pass, then they're pushed to a book activity or a book resource. And then they can reattempt that quiz as often as they like. Once they do get that 80% and get a pass rate, then they can move on to the next activity, which in case is a lesson activity. Similar sort of path from 50 to 79. However, that SCORM activity is going to be slightly different. You see, obviously it's different. It's got a lowercase a, whereas the other one has an uppercase A. Completely different activities. And that might be reflective of a smaller gap in knowledge, or a moderate to good understanding of the course material subject, but maybe just a few missing items versus SCORM activity 1, which may be a bigger activity with more content to get that individual up to speed. So let's say everyone's completed and passed and moved on to the lesson here. If they had their pre-assessment quiz and immediately got a passing grade of 80 to 100%, they go straight to that lesson. They have no knowledge or no visibility of this whole stream of work here. And once they get a passing grade in that lesson, because there is also here an opportunity for them to not pass, then they have visibility to a seminar activity for them to book on. Once they have been marked as fully attended, then their certificate for the course is available to them. And once they've viewed that, then they are presented with the course feedback form, and only on the completion of that do they complete the course. So because of this, the only activity that actually has to be mandatory as a course completion requirement is the feedback. The rest of them you don't need to add. In fact, I would encourage you not to. Having said that, you'll see when I've flick over to the course, I have in fact made this first quiz mandatory and a course completion requirement, just so it shows up in the course completion block. And so individuals have more of a step through the course, so they know what they have to do and they've got smaller goals. So while you don't have to have multiple of these assessment or touch points as requirements for course completion, you may choose to, just so that the learner has those smaller steps towards completion and hopefully success in that course. So let me show you what that looks like. So bear with me as I stop share and then restart. I just need to stop this show. Actually, maybe if I just go in show, we might have that. So Matt, can you tell me, are you seeing my local site right now?
Yeah, I can see local site fine, Mona.
Brilliant. Thank you for being there for me. Is there anything in the chat before I start showing this?
No, I was just thinking as well, like it could be quite good for like things like needs analysis, couldn't it? If you're what you were just showing then. So if you're coming in,
exactly, yeah.
So yeah, it's a great way to show adaptive learning.
Okay, yeah. So doing a pre-assessment, saying what do you know, what are your learning requirements?
Okay, just Joanne has one question. So if your learner does this over a period of time, is there automated emails to remind the learner to go back to the course as they still need to complete, say, the knowledge from quiz 1?
Oh, no, there is no automated reminders there. It's a good idea. I think there are some mechanisms where you could remind the trainer to remind individuals. They're using the event monitoring functionality. Matt might be kind enough to post a link to the help docs on event monitoring into the chat for you. But at this stage, that's something that we'll probably look at in the short to medium future around engagement within the total products. Great question, great idea. So I've reproduced that crazy flowchart into a course here on my site. This, I should say, is a completely unthemed vanilla site. There's nothing at all, so it's very black and white. So use your imagination and pretend it's beautifully themed and looks great. But what I wanted you to focus on is the content here in the middle of the screen. And that represents that slightly more colourful flowchart that we saw a moment ago. So I'm logged in as an administrator right now. So I want to show you that creating these adaptive pathways means a lot on screen for you. But this is all helpful stuff. And I will log in as a learner in just a second to show the difference. So here we have that pre-assessment quiz, and I'm not tracking completion because I'm an administrator, but you'll see once I logged in as a learner that this is a mandatory requirement. If I go to the course completion area here, again, just for the clarity and for the small goal idea for the learners, I've added activity completion as a course completion requirement, as well as that feedback. If I collapse this here, then you can see all the range of different course completion options available to you. So it can be based on activity completion, completion of other courses, it could be date-based, it could be duration, could be total course grade, and I mentioned the manual completion by yourself or others. And it can be a combination of all of those items, and you have these any or all options here. So it can be whether the individual completes all the courses or whether their manager simply goes, yes, they've demonstrated this particular skill or knowledge and sign them off. So it can be an either or an any in this option. Any questions on that so far?
No more questions, Meredith.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So you can see here that the activities that have a conditional access, so the SCORM activity 1 and 2, and they are grayed out. If you've got a good contrast on your screen there, you'll see that they're grayed out. And likewise, this here shows you the restricted access. So this is not available unless you get a particular score in the pre-assessment quiz. And this hidden otherwise shows that that restriction isn't visible to individuals. So when they come into the course, they'll see none of that content available to them. I just want to show you what that looks like from an administrative point of view, and then I'll flick over to the learner account. So if I go into the settings of this activity, then I can go into the restrict access, and here is the individual. They must have a score between 0 and 49%. So in this case, the quiz, that pre-assessment quiz, has a passing grade of 80, but the individual can, or 80% rather, but the individual can get obviously a full 100% if they like. And the individual must, in terms of completion, this is automatically tracked, so they must open it, and they must be marked as completed by the SCORM activity. So my recommendation is that you add all of the activities to your course, and as you add each activity, you set those completion requirements. Once you've added all the activities in those course activity completion requirements, then go back and add the restrict access, because you won't be able to do that as you go. So for example, you won't be able to say that something is complete until you've created that particular activity. And likewise, you're not going to be able to add restrictions unless there are completion requirements on each of those activities. So that's what it looks like from an administrative point of view. You can see that that's a lot. I want to go now in as a learner. So I've got 3 learners here. I've just called them stream 1, 2, and 3 from my own brain. Learner 1, or stream 1, is the individual that got between 0 and 49%, so that wanted to go through SCORM activity 1. So I'm just going to do a cheaty login as. And I've already gone in as this individual and completed the quiz badly. Deliberately got it wrong. Don't feel sorry for learner 2, they didn't feel a thing. And they here now can only see activity 1. They don't see all of the other content, activity 2, and they don't also have that the knowledge check until they've completed that SCORM activity, and they don't have that upskill book. Because that will be available to them once they've completed that first activity. Note that they can actually see this applying knowledge, and they can also view those restrictions so that they know that they're going to have to complete sorry, that's an any of, so they know they're going to have to complete something called a knowledge check at some point. And it's important to note that because you might hide some of these restrictions, because it might from a, from a learner motivation point of view, might be slightly demoralizing that they know that some learners are moving through on a faster or a different track. It's still important to communicate in some way to those learners what they have to do and why they're doing it. So I've just added a little label here that they can see so that they know that they're going to have to potentially catch up on particular activities, and that's why their activity they didn't complete and pass, and that there's a different option or a different path available to them, but they don't necessarily have an awareness of what that path looks like. I think it's important for motivation that individual not only does feel that it's personalized, but that other individuals aren't fast tracking, even if they might be, just from a personal motivation and empowerment point of view. So let me demonstrate again what this looks like from a different perspective. So this is individual 2 or stream 2. Again, just cheating by going long it is. And now they've completed the pre-assessment quiz. They got between 50 and 79% in this quiz, and now they see activity 2 in a similar sort of view, but not activity 1. Any questions while I'm logging in and out, Matt?
Not at the moment. Everything must be crystal clear.
That's what I'm choosing to believe. Okay, and finally, bouncing backwards and forwards. Here is the learner who passed that assessment quiz. They've got a little tick here to say that they've completed it and it's passed it. And this catch-up content topic is completely invisible. There's no content in there for them. So they are pushed straight to the applying knowledge section, and they can jump straight into that particular activity. The other thing that I wanted to demonstrate is that labels are a great way of creating an adaptive path and making certain content available to individuals. The Academy and Community team use this for a level of self-selection within a course environment for sectors, and they use this manual self-completion. So this is rather than automated activity completion, an individual goes, yep, I'm done. And if they do that and tick it, are you interested in becoming a mentor or trainer, tick, then the following item becomes available to them. I should have actually completely made that invisible, so for clarity, but you get the idea, so that you can hide information in labels, have manual completion, and different options can display depending on their answer. So you could have several tick boxes here. So have you done this? Have you done that? Are you interested in that? And then different labels available displaying different information as a result of that manual selection or manual completion. It's an interesting take on adaptive learning. And you can use this to do things like course recommendations. So what do I do next? Are you interested in learning more about X, Y, or Z? And then providing an example course of what they might want to learn next. You can use those labels for that. So I do have a slide here, but about programs and certifications, but really what I want to show is on this live side as well. So I'll skip straight to that unless there's anything in the chat, Matt.
So Julia just has a question about the catch-ups. So just saying, is it possible to hide the catch-up section if there's no content for that the individual is required to do?
Yes, I think there probably is. Let's have a look. I think it's under that topic restriction. So if I go to edit topic, perhaps if we say that they can't view it if they have not completed, if they have passed, that's right. So if they have passed the pre-assessment, so you would go activity completion, the pre-assessment has been marked completed with a pass grade, then they won't see that entire topic. That's a good point. I probably should have done that. Does that answer your question?
Hope so.
Okay.
Another question. Could you show the admin site of the label tick box?
Oh yeah, sure can. So this is just a standard label. So I've just gone to add a label, and then under activity completion, it was set to manually mark it as completion. Note that this is now locked. This is actually a good point. Once you set all your completion data and an individual has started moving through that process, so for example, I've just clicked it, it will lock that completion data, but I can always delete or unlock it and make those changes. But in this case, the option is just learner can mark it is completed. If I, in fact, add another label, that might give you a little bit more clarity. So I just made sure that it was set to manually mark the activity as completed. And then with this here is again just another label. I think I was on that before. The restrict access is that the previous label, and it just gives you a preview of the content, has been marked as completed. It's really as simple as that. Now, what I should have clicked before is this little eye icon, which is where you don't show the content if the user doesn't meet this condition, so that they didn't see it at all. Does that answer your, has that answered all of the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I think so for now.
If we double check that I'm not going completely insane and see what it looks like for Learner 3 now. Oh, it didn't remove my catch-up content. I must have rushed that configuration, but in theory, you should be able to restrict that, the visibility of that entire topic. So you'll see here that because I've set that restriction as invisible now or hidden, and I don't see the preview content until I've actually marked it as complete. So it's working a little better. This I need to go back and focus on, but I think I might be rushing it, but it should in theory be possible to remove this entire topic from visibility. Okay, let me log back in as administrator and talk a little bit about programs and certifications. So the adaptive learning I've just shown you is within a course context, and you can create these quite sophisticated learning journeys on perhaps on one subject or a series of small subjects. But if it's bigger than that, in terms of having more courses that you need users to complete, such as an induction course or induction program, you put them here within a larger program where the conditions of access are based on course completion rather than activity completion. So it's just a little bigger. So these longer adaptive learning paths programs are built around this idea of course sets. And you'll see this first course set on screen is called Induction Part 1. And you can have as many course sets as you like. And then you can have then, or, and divider between any subsequent sets. Now, this is where it can get really complex. So what I've done is deliberately created quite a complex program here. A note, of course, you could have a program which is a simple course A and B, and then a C or D. But I've gone a little bit bonkers here just to show the flexibility and the different adaptive pathways you can create with the programs and certifications tool. So here we have induction part. Where an individual needs to complete all courses within this course set, and there are 4 courses here. So you'll see because it's all courses, we have and dividers automatically added within this particular course set. Then we have a second set here as I scroll up. We have a then divider. So in this case, the individual completes these 4 courses, then they have access to complete the second part. Here, they can choose one course, and there's 2 options. So there's an or divider between these 2 items. So they've completed set 1, and then they have access to complete part 2, and because there's an and divider, they then complete also either part 3A or part 3B. So this is designed, this part 3A is designed for team members and team leaders. So they can pick 2 of the 3 courses available to them. Or if they are perhaps a team manager, they'll look at this part 3B program where they can pick 3 of the 4 courses that are listed there. So note that when you create these course sets, you have 4 different options. 1, all, some, or all courses are optional. Then if you have some courses, this box comes available and you can enter a number in here. And you can keep going. You can add as many course sets as you like. I would say probably 3 or 4 is probably enough, unless it's a very complex, perhaps a degree level qualification. But it means that you can support and automate that process of course completion. And the programs and certification functionality has the added advantage of those reminders that I think it was Joanne was asking about. Apologies if it wasn't. Where you can automate a series of messages to let people know they've been enrolled and that particular due dates are coming up. And you can set them periodic check-ins and reminders as well, using the learner follow-up option when you create a new message. Now I should say I'm going through this all really pretty quick. There are courses on creating restrict access or conditional access activities and course completion within the Academy. I'm sure Matt is now frantically looking for a link. And there's also really great Academy course on programs and certifications where you can learn all about not just creating these adaptive paths, but configuring these messages and all the other tabs that are along the top of the screen here, into like assigning individuals and tracking and recording completion. And I would encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to have a look at those courses and any of the help documentation. Now I am going to attempt to swap my screen back again. So let's see how well this works. Oh, wow. Technology, right? So this is the programs and certification slide, which we didn't really need to use. I wanted to just let you know that there is a range of other resources available to you. We have just written an adaptive learning feature sheet that's just going through the design process now, so it should be available on our website under the resources section very, very soon. There's a range of help documentation and Academy courses on these subjects, as I've said, and these here, this slide will then provide links directly to those help pages. Which takes us to questions. What was popping up in the chat, Matt?
All right, thanks for all those great tips. We've got a few different comments. So, what does the learner follow-up message do in a program, please?
Oh, let me go back to it. You're just testing me now, you guys. All right, let me end show so I can go back to my course. Give me a second. Okay, so if I add, you see my local screen again?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, thank you. So if I go to add a learner follow-up, what this allows you to do right at the bottom here is following the completion of the program, you can send them a message and you've got an option in terms of the time. If you want to poke them at any point, you can talk about use the course set or the course overdue notification. Now, the interesting thing about the program messages, see I add them and they move to the bottom, which is why I'm scrolling, is some of them you can optionally include your manager. And even though they appear to be plain text here, if you click on the contextual help here, they're actually variable or placeholder based. So you can customize the content of the material using any of these placeholders. So if you copy and paste user full name, it will replace the message, the name of the individual who receives the message, and will be replaced there in that variable. In terms of ongoing, I think the question around engagement is a good one. That is something that we're looking at in more depth after probably the next release. Anything else there in the chat?
There's no more questions at the moment, but if anyone else has any more questions before we finish for today.
I know that if I press stop share, then they'll definitely ask, just to test me.
Joanne's just saying thank you, that'd be very useful. Mike's saying no thank you, and he's well, which is good to know.
Excellent. Well, I do hope that everyone here on the call is well and keeping happy and healthy, as are all your family members. If anything crops up after we close the session down, please do post any questions you have on the community forums. Any member of the Academy and community team who can answer might send it to me, but I have every faith they'll better respond. So unless there's anything else popping up, we can probably call it a day. Excellent.
Yeah, thank you,
Cool.
everyone.
Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. Yeah, stay happy and healthy, everyone, and stay tuned for the recording. If you want to review anything, I appreciate I am talking quite fast. Then it will be available to you, and you'll get an email letting you know. I think, is that right, Ed?
Yeah, you get one from Zoom automatically. We'll add it after this immediately.
Lovely. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, have a great day.
Thanks for that.
All right. See ya. Bye.